if we're not live. My name's Jennifer Hamady, and welcome to the Art of Singing, our monthly Facebook Lives. The reason I'm unsure of whether or not we're live, as some of you may know, this is actually our second Facebook Live, second slash first, because last month I came on screen and I spoke to, I guess, the camera for 45 minutes and waxed philosophical and had a great time, only to find out that it didn't actually work. So I'm excited to be here, hopefully with you all. And of course, I'll find out at the end of 45 or so minutes whether or not I'm alone again. But hopefully this is going through and you guys can see me and hear me. And please, some of you have emailed some great questions that I'm happy to address, but it looks like we do have a chat here, a chat option. So please also feel free to share any questions you may have. I think most of you probably have a sense of who I am, but for those of you who maybe are just saying hi and checking in to see what this is all about, I'm a voice coach and therapist, and I specialize in technical and emotional issues that interfere with self-expression. So what does that mean? Was a professional singer for many years, about 20 years of my career, and I toured and sang and recorded with all kinds of different artists and companies, and then shifted largely into writing books and developing a coaching practice about singing with a particular focus on the emotional issues that I would consistently see coming up for people that interfered with their technique. So for example, people would come to me saying, I'm having trouble hitting this note, or my performance anxiety is really getting the best of me, or even things like my register shift isn't very clean. And even though some of those things, the first and the third particularly, seem like they would be primarily technical issues, 9 times out of 10 in my experience, they're caused or exacerbated by an emotional component. So that's been my work. It kind of really organically developed. Maybe now about 10 years ago, I went back to graduate school in psychology and sort of gave myself an academic support and foundation for the work I'd been doing intuitively. And I also have written now 3 books on singing and the psychology of singing and performing, which I love and I'm very proud of. And so that's where I am today. And we are based now with my family in Washington, D.C., where I'm originally from. We were in Manhattan for many years, and I still get up to New York 4 or 5 times a year to see clients and give workshops and master classes. But this is home base for now. And life is great. Life is great. So unless you all have a question, I'm just going to dive into this wonderful list of ones of yours that I have here. The first question is, speaking of books, what is your next book going to be and when will it come out? And that's from Erica. It looks like in New York. Hi, Erica, if you're there. Well, I can tell you what the next book is going to be, but I can't tell you when it's going to come out because maybe like a lot of writers and creative people, I have my goal and ambition. Actually, I wanted to get it done by the end of 2020, but happily in a way because of all the live events I've been doing and speaking and also just working with clients and living life and being with my family, it looks like it might be pushed a little later. But I'll go ahead and tell you about the book. And actually, if you'll bear with me, I'll tell you about the 3 books I'm working on. Crazy, and that's why I drink quite a bit of tea. Take a quick sip in honor of the 3 books. The first one, and the one where my heart really is right now, is going to be kind of a comprehensive Bible, as it were, to just use the concept. Just a thorough look at my technique and my approach to teaching voice. You know, as I mentioned, many of my books really touch on the psychology of singing, and I wanted to write something that really talks from A to Z about how I view developing the vocal instrument. And of course, those of you that know me, there will be quite a bit interspersed about psychological issues that interfere with those specific things. So breathing and support, fear and anxiety, of course, interfere with those. Bravery and courage certainly have quite a bit to do with whether or not we strive for certain notes or certain registers, or conversely interfere with them and clench and grab and prevent ourselves from achieving them. So there will be a lot of that, but it's going to be a book that I really hope people can go to and say, if they've read the first Art of Singing, where I go into the basics. I'm just glancing at the books over here. my first book, I go into the basics of technique. This is going to be the next step. So it's going to be a book that will really just walk people from the A to Z of my view and experience of how to best develop your voice, train your voice, strengthen your voice, and optimize your voice. So that's the next book. And then the other two books that I'm working on, really, one is going to be for singers and performers and creatives, and it's going to be much more of a mindset book. And there's a lot of that in my three current books. But this is going to really look at the mindset, and I'd say even sort of the spirit, the non-religious spirituality of what it means to be a singer, what it means to be a performer, how to really fully embody ourselves as those things in a way that gives us personal joy and meaning and satisfaction, which of course, as you can imagine, has quite a bit to do with shirking the ego and getting ourselves out of the way so that the real people who we are, the real us, the real we can therefore sing. So that's going to be a book for creatives about mindset and performing. And then the third book that I'm working on, goodness gracious, is going to be all that I've learned and written about and all that I've done in my coaching practice around self-expression for everyone. So that's the third one that I'm working on now, and I'm working on them in that order. I touch each of them daily or at least once a week, but my primary focus right now is on the exercise tome, I guess we could say. So it looks like a couple people have joined. What I was saying is I have some people have emailed questions, and I'm happy to answer them, but if you all who are online now want to type a question in that you may have in the comments, I'd be happy to answer it. And for those of you who aren't with us right now, this is, technology willing, going to be available on my Facebook page for you to watch at any time too. So now and going forward, if you can't make noon on a Monday, which I know can be a tricky time, we'll still be here. So if you do have questions for the next one, which is going to be the first Monday of April at noon, feel free to email them in or send me a note, put them in the comments somewhere on the Art of Singing page, and I'll get to them. So hi, Jonathan. It's good to see you. Okay, so since we don't have a question live, I'll go to the next one. Oh dear, what did you, this is from a different Jonathan in California. What, as a voice coach, have you thought of the debates? I know he wrote that before the last one. It's funny, the last Facebook Live, another Erica asked a question about what I thought of the Super Bowl performances. And so, of course, these are, we're speaking about things at a moment in time. And to the debates, I can only, of course, give you my opinion personally, but also professionally. I think that we as a culture go through cycles. There are ways of speaking and being from a speaking sense. There are ways of speaking and being that become popularized. So, for example, there was a time we can all remember when people said, like, and our current ones now are, that's exactly right, or so, ... whether that's to deliberately buy somebody time to really flesh out their thoughts, or whether it's just sort of a, air to the bird, water to the fish thing we pick up just by virtue of being in the culture. I'm not sure. But one thing I think that has permeated our culture, specifically to Jonathan's question, that manifested itself in the debates for sure, is that we have, and frankly you can see it on no matter your political views, in any talk show, any television these days, any news, quote unquote, news program these days, it seems that we have begun to equate intelligence, or the notion of intelligence, or the appearance of intelligence, with how quickly we speak, how aggressively we speak, and how willing we are to speak over other people. And so what, of course, is implied in this is listening doesn't seem to be a real consideration any longer when one is interested in coming across effectively and powerfully. So to this last debate, which I did watch, and again, I'm saying this completely devoid of politics. I'm just speaking about the people speaking so that we can do this exercise together, and so I can answer Jonathan and maybe some other of your questions. I felt like the person who did the best job on stage as a speaker was Mike Bloomberg, because I felt that he was unruffled and unrattled, that he said his piece, he waited for his turn, he didn't speak over anyone, and I felt also that he was speaking directly to us, the audience. He was committed to, it seemed, getting his point across, telling his truth or his perception of, what he could offer as a presidential candidate. And for me, that landed. Again, whether you agree with it or not, I'm not talking politics. Where I felt that many other people um, raised their voices, were shouting, interrupting, and maybe they either believe that that in their life experience is what gets a point across, or maybe they were coached, to be the more forceful you are, the more presidential you seem. And certainly we have shifted into that sort of, currently we're in a place where that does seem to be the practice. But for me, as a voice coach and certainly as a human being, and I think in terms of long-term effectiveness, that the approach Mike Bloomberg seemed to take, for me, I think was the best one. In spite of the media saying he did a terrible job in both debates now, it turns out. I don't know, I found him to be very effective, and when I listen to people in my life, that many agree, again, separate of politics. So I hope, Jonathan, that answers your question about my thoughts on the debate. And we'll see. No matter who wins, we'll see, as the years and decades go by. I really hope that the pendulum does swing back to more civility and humility and slowing down and realizing that in speech, like so much of life, less is more, and that presence is certainly more powerful than screaming and yelling and interrupting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the next question I have, if there are no other questions, I touched on this. When are you next coming to New York, says Mike, in New York. Hi, Mike. Yes, so a couple thoughts. As I said, I try, I try my best to get up to Manhattan to see clients 4 to 5 times a year. I think the minimum I get up there is 3 times a year, and I'm really trying to get up there 5 times. The next time we don't have scheduled yet, in part because I'm going to be in Denver and California this month, coronavirus willing, and also because, right now travel plans, we're a little bit on hold here, just waiting to see what happens and such. But 2 things that you can do to find out and stay abreast of my travel schedule and all of my activities. You can go to my website, findingyourvoice.com, if you haven't already, and sign up for updates. I think there's, right when you go to the page, something will pop up and you can type in your email, and you'll get a notice. I don't flood inboxes. I think I send out an email once every 2 to 3 months with not only my schedule, but how things are coming on the books or articles I've written. And then also on the home page of my website, soon there's going to be something that says events. There's going to be an events page, so you can just click on that really quickly and easily and see the schedule. But also about halfway down my home page is a little calendar that'll tell you exactly where I'm going to be, and links when appropriate to location, how to sign up, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that answers your question, and if I had to guess, I'd say I'd probably be there in June with the way things are going. And as some of you may know, I usually come up for 2 to 3 days and coach for, I have about 20 slots, and I'm happy to make time for everybody if and when and how I can, and I really do look forward to that. So, one other thing about New York that's coming, I'm not sure when, I think October, but don't hold me to that. You all have been asking for quite a long time about teacher trainings, and it's on the it's on the ever-growing to-do list of things to do. And I do think about it and touch on it quite a bit, and certainly this exercise book will have a lot to do with that. But I'm going to be giving, I think in October, and I will keep you posted, an all-day intensive for voice teachers or those singers interested in really getting into the nitty-gritty of technique and how to teach it, and therefore how best to internalize it and share that with others, or just internalize it for yourself. And the idea is to do kind of a 10 to 4 or 10 to 5 p.m. one day. It'll probably be a Saturday or Sunday, so no matter your schedules, it'll be hopefully ideal for the greatest number of people. And we'll have readings, we'll have exercises, we'll have an accompanist, we'll be kind of doing some mock coaching sessions for one another, answering any specific questions you have about the voice and the way that I teach voice, and of course going through an overview of what I've learned and am learning along the way. To that last point, it certainly is not going to be this is everything you ever need to know about singing. It's, as I think of my books, what I have learned so far, what I am learning. This is what I have to offer. Let's all learn together, and it's a step along the journey. So for private coachings, I'll be in New York, and around October, I'll be up there for a weekend to do one of these teacher training events. So I know, Melissa, if you're out there, you've been wonderfully persistent in asking me about that, and thank you for your patience and encouragement. We have a question from another Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan. How do you find an individual's emotional or ego block to their voice? What is the process of finding that? Sip of tea. Hold on, Jonathan. He's asking a wonderful question, and just to clarify for those of you who might not be clear or maybe can't see if you're watching later the comments, Jonathan, I know, is a fantastic voice teacher in South Carolina, and he's curious about when somebody comes in. I don't know, Jonathan, specifically what you're speaking of. If someone's presenting with an issue, a technical issue, how do you ascertain if it is a psychological or emotional block? And or maybe there's nothing presenting, but how do you go about that? I'm going to imagine, unless you say otherwise, the former. You know, I think that for voice teachers, even those who don't specialize in emotional issues, who are real technicians, I think we all know, I'm going to speak for all of us as a general, as a whole, it's very rare that I meet a voice teacher, even the straight technicians, who don't deal with emotional stuff. Because by virtue of working with singers and performers, you're working with their emotions and their hearts. You know, the voice is in our bodies, and therefore when we reach out with our voices, a lot of other stuff comes up too. Our hopes, our dreams, our desires. And then for those women and men who've chosen this as a profession, whether they're just starting out as students or whether they're professionals or striving to be, there's all of the emotionality that goes along with that aspect, the hopes and the dreams. So, Jonathan, with that background, to answer your specific question, you know, the first thing I'd say, maybe counterintuitively, is that I don't necessarily look at someone when I'm working with them, even if I hear something suspect, technically. I don't necessarily say to myself, you know, what's the psychological issue? I tend to lead with looking at the physical manifestation. So, for example, which, by the way, usually leads me straight down the rabbit hole to whatever that trigger is, that thing that's causing the physical manifestation. So, for example, if someone comes in and they are, technically speaking, holding their breath, they're holding back, they're grabbing in their throat, of course, some of that can be poor technique or improper training or maybe just bad habits. It, of course, also can be fear of what they perceive as self-exposure, fear of being too big, fear of being too loud. It can be a million things. But I think so as not to make an assumption that may be inaccurate, I really deal with the voice. So if this person is holding his or her breath, I look at that and try to see if we can explore getting them to release the breath. And usually what happens when someone who has been holding on to something unknowingly, let's say in this case the breath releases it, there's a feeling of elation. Oh my gosh, I had no idea I was holding my breath. Thank you. How do we make that a habit? There's joy associated with it and freedom and release. So there's a success. Yet when someone who's been holding their breath, we find a way to have them physically experience the releasing of that breath, when emotion rushes up and in, or hesitation rushes up and in, when the emotional reaction to the physical freedom is not joy, but is concern, that's your sign that there's something emotionally going on in the background that occurs to that person as being safer to hold back rather than sing and express. And so then you get to go on this wonderful journey with them as your partner. It's a big part of my teaching. It's not top-down leadership. It's as a partnership in conversation saying, you know, it sounds like there's even though you want to have your breath be free and your voice be free, it sounds like, there's some, and looks like there's some comfort for you in holding back. Let them speak their piece. Listen not only to their words, but what their body and energy and voice is saying as they speak the words of what they want to share. And then also, as Jonathan and some of you out there know, my approach isn't to try to explain things correctly through the intellect, because that tends to give us understanding. Oh, okay, I shouldn't be afraid of failure. Great, I'll let go. Doesn't always work, doesn't often work, in my opinion. But instead, to see how many times we can create for them, or help to have them create for themselves, vocal freedom, breath freedom, even things like lying on the ground with their knees propped up to support the lower back and breathing in and out and making non-singing sounds so that their ego doesn't think, oh gosh, I'm singing, and have them experience for 10 or 15 minutes just this incredible sensation of, my gosh, this is so wonderful. And eventually in time, via reward theory and psychology, the reward of self-protection is going to start to not look and feel so good as the comfort and freedom, and eventually the feedback we get from ourselves and from the world of how marvelous our voices sound and how marvelous we feel when we just let go. So Jonathan, I hope that answered your question. If not, please say so in the comments and I can add something to that. Hi Dan, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so if any of you have a question, please go ahead and ask it. For those of you Carlos and Dan, who just joined in. People have emailed me some questions that I'm answering, and if you all have questions here, please ask them, and I'd love to answer your questions too. So, and for those of you also joining in, we do this once a month. This is actually our first time, because last month, due to a technical glitch, I talked to myself for 45 minutes. So welcome to our first official Facebook Live. We'll be back April the 1st, Monday of the month at noon, with all of your questions in real time, or email them to me, text them to me. So if no more questions here about anything singing, self-expression, my books, my practice, life, love, whatever you guys want to talk about, I'm happy to brainstorm with you. Let's see, what's the next question? Okay, so another Michael. What's up with the Michaels and the Jonathans and the Ericas today? I love it. What upcoming events do you have going on, particularly online, as I am in Utah? Okay, so as I said a moment ago, on my website, you can always go to findingyourvoice.com, and on the home page, on the lower right-hand side, you're going to see a calendar that'll have all of the events coming up. I keep it pretty current. They all have links that'll give you details, and soon, right when you go to my website, you're going to see an events button that you can click on, and that'll give you, I hope, will be more navigable, I think is the word that the technical people use. But what's coming up right now, actually, yesterday I just wrapped up a public speaking masterclass for speakers in Washington, D.C., which was really fun if any of you are out there. And thank you so much for really just such a brave, terrific weekend. I do have some intensives coming up. Those are not on the website yet. I did write about them in my latest newsletter, but they'll be on the website in about a week. And basically, I talked about the teacher training one earlier, but they're going to be for singers, for self-expression, and on general self-expression for professionals, and also teacher training. Just because you've all asked for things like this, I'm going to dedicate a day, hopefully twice a year, to each one. So twice a year do a singing intensive, teacher training intensive, and self-expression intensive, where in New York or DC we'll get together from 10 to 5, 10 to 6, just 5 of us, 6 including myself, and we'll really deeply explore, for singers, technique and performance, for professionals, and from a non-musical point of view, anybody who wants to explore self-expression and interpersonal relationships. And then, as I said earlier, for singing teacher training, we'll really do a major deep dive into technique, and also how to coach people. We'll do mock coaching with one another, so that you can really try on the techniques and practices. So those are all coming up. There's one, don't hold me to this, May 16th in Washington, D.C. for self-expression. And I'll send out an email about that this month at some point with all the details. I believe that it's 10 to 3, May 16th. You'd think I'd have this in front of me. And I would look at my newsletter, but I'm afraid I'd hang up on you, which is very likely. So I'll be in touch about that. Um, oh, and then another thing that's coming up that I'm very excited about. This is not online either, so I apologize. But let me share this thing, and then I'll tell you more about the online opportunities. Um, I started giving quarterly master classes here in Washington, D.C., where we're now based. The next one is April 26th. It's a Sunday from 2 to 4:30. And essentially, there are opportunities for singers, speakers, anyone to come, pay 20 bucks at the door. I wanted to make it really accessible and either be coached by me or just observe. And the first one that we did here in DC in January was so terrific. Lots of tears, happy tears, lots of breakthroughs, and so much fun. So they're quarterly, and the dates are on my website. And why I'm bringing this up to your question about online is we haven't filmed those yet, but soon, with the permission of the participants, I would like to film them because I think even though remotely you won't be performing, the feedback that I've gotten has been that they're just so incredible to watch people be coached in real time, even though you're not the one singing or speaking, to experience alongside of the participant the breakthrough just gives access to similar breakthroughs for yourself. So those sometime this year, hopefully I'll have a couple of those available, again with the permission of the participants, because they do get emotional and I want to respect that. But the next one, if you do want to come to DC, is April 26th. And then I am working on online courses. I have that in the pile. But to be truthful, right now I'm enjoying so much doing these live events, including this one where once a month I get together online so that wherever you are in the world, you can ask questions. We can touch base about anything. We can check in. If you've worked with me in person or remotely, you can say to yourself, I worked with Jen on this, but I have a question. Let me see if she can answer it before our next session. I think the goal, if there's a theme to 2020 and beyond, it's wanting to create community, wanting to have consistent opportunities for us to get together, for you to feel nurtured and supported, and soon to really work up this page, The Art of Singing, as a place similarly for community where people can talk, get to know one another, support each other. As we all know, unfortunately, sometimes the singing world, the performing world, can be so competitive, and I really want to mitigate that. I think we're all in it together in life and in singing. So just providing a space and opportunities for us to connect and grow and learn and share and support one another. So I hope that answered your question if you're out there. That's the end of my list. Do you guys have any other questions? And if not, we'll sign off and do this again next month. I'll give you all a minute to see if there's anything you're itching to talk about or even share, or a thought you have, or a topic for a book, because of course working on 3 books at once is never enough. No more questions? Okay, well guys, thank you so much. This has been fun. I'm glad it looks like this actually worked. Thank you also to all the men and women at Apple who on the phone and in the store helped me figure out how to get this finally working. I'm really grateful. And to all of you, whether you're here now and watching or whether you watch later, I'm going to make sure that this stays somehow on my Facebook page, I hope, fingers crossed. I thank you. I really appreciate you all and feel so blessed and grateful for what I get to do with you, for you all every day. So take care. Happy Monday. And feel free to email me. You can email me at any time through findingyourvoice.com. There's a contact page, or put something in the comments here and I'll gladly answer you. And have a wonderful day, week, and month. And I'll see you guys here again first Monday in April at noon. Take care. Bye, guys.